Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for my Friday mornings live at 9 coaching session. If you're watching the live session, first of all, I apologize that we got off a couple minutes late. Want to remind anybody that's watching this live that you can ask questions in the dashboard, that the team is monitoring any questions that come through. So if you have anything you want to cover, just type it into the dashboard. As well, if throughout the week you ever have something you would love for us to talk about in the Friday morning live at 9 sessions, please let me know. So last Friday, I was talking for a little while about how my daughter had been homesick for a half a day and the guilt that goes along with taking a half day off from work. And I think karma set in because I was complaining about having to take a half a day off from work, and I ended up being sick for the rest of the week. So finally, this is the first day in a week that I'm feeling a little bit, at least like 70% back to myself. So a couple things that I want to cover today is, first of all, I saw this awesome Instagram post the other day and it stuck with me. I took a picture of it because I was like, wow, I got to think about the way that I speak when I'm emailing people. Because sometimes when we email people, we come from a spot of weakness instead of strength. And basically what this Instagram post was, it was called How to Email Like a Boss. And so I'm going to give you some of the examples that I saw from this post. Number one, what happens when you took longer than expected to get back to somebody in an email? Many of us write this long apology like, I'm so sorry that it took me longer than expected. And what this post said is to come from a position of strength instead of like always apologizing for yourself. Instead, come from a position of strength and just say, hey, thank you for your patience. So you're getting across the same thing, but not coming from a spot of weakness. Second of all, how do you say in an email, like to compose an email that's coming from a place of strength rather than weakness when it comes to scheduling appointments? So they said the mistake some people make is when we're emailing back and forth trying to schedule a time, we say, what would work best for you? You tell me how much time you want to take from me. Instead, what we should be doing is setting the time ourselves. Like, we should be conveying a message that, hey, our time matters too. So when scheduling an appointment, instead of saying, hey, when do you want me? I'm available, saying, would this time work better or would this time work better? So that what you're conveying is that your time matters as much as theirs. How about when it comes to just telling somebody that, like, you're welcome? One of the ways they say sometimes we come from a place of weakness is somebody will say, like, hey, thank you so much for doing that. And we're like, hey, no worries, don't worry about it. Like, we did take our time to do it. They say what you should say instead is always happy to help. So it comes from a place of strength. Instead of no problem, no worries, like, hey, I got plenty of time on my hands to be helping you. Instead, respond, hey, I'm always happy to help. And when it comes to letting people know through your emails that you know what you're doing, instead of in your emails saying, I think maybe we should do this, which kind of like what this says is a little bit weak. I think maybe we should do it like this. Instead, a stronger sentence would be, it would be best if we did this. So you're conveying strength, that you know what you're doing. So instead of a weak sentence, like, I think maybe we should do things this way, our stronger sentence would be, it would be best if we did it this way. What about when you're composing an email with something complicated or hard to convey? Sometimes we write these 40-page emails and we rewrite it 42 times and we say at the top, like, hey, I hope this comes through the way that I want it to be conveyed. What this says is pick up the phone. Like, if you're unsure that an email is going to get conveyed the way you want it to get conveyed, or if your email is like more than a paragraph, that means it's time to pick up the phone and have a conversation. That should not even be in an email format. How do we ask somebody that we're talking to, let's say a customer, if they understand what we're saying? What this says is that a weak way of asking somebody if everything is making sense, a weak way is saying, hopefully that makes sense. Instead, a stronger way to say that is, hey, let me know if you have any questions. How about when you're trying to hold somebody accountable? So like a team member, you want to hold them accountable, or you're waiting for something from a customer. Oftentimes we send a weak email and we say, hey, just want to check in, how's things going on this? Weak, because we still don't really have an answer. Instead, a stronger way to convey that message is to say, when can I expect an update on this? Next one is, what happens when somebody catches you in an error, like something you said? Oftentimes what we do is, like, when we make a mistake, we're super apologetic and we'll be like, hey, so sorry, my bad, I totally missed it. A stronger way to convey the same message when somebody catches an error on your behalf is to say, hey, nice catch, updated file attached, thanks for letting me know. So instead of like a weak spot of being like, oh, I'm so sorry, I screwed up, just saying, hey, that was an awesome catch, updated the file, it's attached, thank you for letting me know that. So much stronger. And that's basically it. You can probably find the JPEG for this. It was called Email Like a Boss, and it was from Danny Donovan, D-A-N-I, Danny Donovan. And like I said, it was an Instagram post, and it was very rarely do you get an Instagram post that like makes you think for 5 minutes. But when I saw that post, I was like, wow, I think the way that I convey or the way I write my emails come across as a little bit weak at times, because definitely in a world where we're doing 60 things at once and our days are jammed, I'm constantly apologizing for being 5 minutes late or forgetting to do something on time. And when I read this, I was like, there's a better way to convey the message when I'm sending out those emails. So worth a look. It's just a little picture. Email Like a Boss, Danny Donovan, D-A-N-I, Donovan.com. I promised an announcement before I go into the next section today. Many of us are going to our award program tonight, so super excited to celebrate 5 years of success at LAER. One of the announcements I wanted to make is that, first of all, last week some of you had signed up for a private coaching session with me. I have your emails. I didn't respond to everybody because I ended up coming down with some sort of bug on Saturday. So if you did email me after last week's program, I promise you I'll catch up this weekend and we will get your private coaching session scheduled for the next week or so. Also, I want to announce that we'll be sending out an email this week, but we have a new location in Westminster. So this is not like a full service office, just something different that we're trying. So if you're out in like the Westminster, Gardner, Leominster area. The Westminster office is what I would call a client meeting center. So it's a cute space. We had it all decorated. Conference table, 3 desks, ability to print, Wi-Fi. So we do a lot of business out in the Westminster office, or Westminster area, and we thought it, just through talking to some of our agents, many of them wanted a place just to be able to go meet customers. So now you can do closings in Westminster, or if you need a quiet place to go work anytime, you can feel free to use that. To get the lockbox information on that office, just email happyagent@laerrealty.com and we'll have that sent out to you. We'll see. Might be a new way for us to do some additional pop-up offices around. There is no administrative staff in that location. So it's truly just a client meeting center. You're not going to see it on MLS. The address is 120 Main Street in Westminster, but we will send out an internal email for anybody that might want to use that location to meet customers or just for a quiet spot to go work. And shout out to all the agents in Leominster who helped us get that up and running. Susan Tebow, Brenda Albert, Mike McLaughlin helped like countless hours helping us get the furniture up and running. Tammy Byers helping us decorate the office. So thank you to everybody that kind of pitched in to get that office up and running for us. So I want to talk today about the psychology of persuasion. This is 2 parts. I'm not going to have enough time to cover both parts in today's program. So I'm going to do 1 part today, and then next Friday I'm going to cover the second half of this this whole idea of persuasion. So basically persuasion or persuading somebody is causing someone to do something through reasoning or argument. Anybody that's in sales is in the business of trying to get people to do what you would like them to do. We as real estate agents, our job is to try to get people to do what we would like them to do, which is usually buy or sell a house. There are 6 principles that go along with, or 6 ways that you can make your life much easier in helping persuade people to do what you would like them to do, or 6 simple ways to cause people to buy or sell with you. So the first one, and I'll talk about, there's 2 books that go with this. Both books are by Robert Cialdini. He's written over the last 2 decades, he's written 2 books on social influence. One is on persuasion and one is called Persuasion. The second book or the follow-up book. And that one is just like the steps you can take before you try to persuade somebody, or persuasion. Today we're going to talk about persuasion and some of the techniques you can use to help people get people to the place you want them to be. Number 1 is reciprocation. So people say yes to those they owe. Those who have given us benefit are entitled to a benefit in return. That's like something we've grown up with since we were in kindergarten. And the way it can play into our business is that if you think about it, we all have these cultural norms. A funny story that they share in the book is that there was this candy store, and the candy store was trying to increase its sales. And so they used the philosophy of reciprocity in order to increase their sales. And what they did is anytime somebody walked in the front door of the candy store, they gave them a free piece of candy. Basically what that did is it increased the likelihood. So somebody that receives a free piece of candy walking into the front store of a candy store is 42% more likely to buy something, because they feel like they have to reciprocate because they just got a gift. So I want you to think about that in the terms of how you run your business. What is it that you could give to a client that they feel like now they want to do something in return? Interestingly, the other thing you can think about is that there are lots of agents that their entire business is built on this philosophy. In other words, all they do on a daily basis, some agents, is give, 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 give. Like they're constantly out giving back to their communities, like through sitting on boards or charities, giving back to their time. When somebody needs something, like a friend or a neighbor, they're the first ones to raise their hand. And when you give to somebody, like that person, in order to feel whole, oftentimes wants to give back. Costco, if you've ever been to Costco wholesale, why do you think that they have, when you go into a Costco on a Saturday or Sunday, they have like all kinds of free stuff? Free food samples, free products like beer, cheese, free lipstick. The reason why is because they know if they give you something, you're 42% more likely to end up buying from them. Think about it. If you've ever received in the mail from a charity a piece of mail with like a coin or $1, sometimes you'll receive from a charity and you can see inside the envelope that there's $1 in it. I received not too long ago, a company was trying to do a survey of local businesses, and you could see when you opened the envelope there was a $10 bill in it. So the reason why these charities and these companies do that is because they know that if they give you something that you're more likely to buy from them. Interestingly, the thing you give, so if you give something to someone, the amount, like reciprocity, it doesn't matter, like the value of what you're giving. That's why it can work with these charities, put like a dime or a quarter in the mailer. They know if they give you something, that many people, because of this cultural norm, just feel like, oh my God, this person gave me something. I have to give them something back. So think about how you could potentially use that in your business. Some of the ways you could do that is like just a small gift when you are going on a listing appointment. Many of our agents use our 7 Secrets to Hiring a Lion book. Like it's a gift. It's something that you can hand people. It feels valuable. Some people use a plant. Some people, the gift they give to a potential client or somebody that they want to go do business with is an interview, which many of you know I've spent the last 10 years interviewing cool people around the world. When you go interview a local business owner, like the guy that owns the pizza shop down the street from your office, and you say, hey, I want to come interview you and write a blog article about your pizza place, they feel indebted that you have helped their business. So what's ironic about all this is I've gone around and I've interviewed now 450 business owners, CEOs. That has resulted in a great deal of business for our company. And what's interesting is I don't go out and do those interviews and jam LAER Realty down anybody's throat. I barely talk about it unless they ask me. But of course they ask me, because as soon as you start doing something for someone, they start digging around to figure out like what can they do to repay this favor. So think outside the box when it comes to what you're giving someone. How about after you meet somebody for a listing, you stop by with a little plant for their home? Something like that, or a new buyer. What about a for sale by owner survival kit? So you see a FSBO down the street and you create a little kit of helpful tools that that seller could use to get their property sold. You're showing up and you're giving them an item of value, a gift. Now they want to reciprocate. Many of you know my husband Jay has built a massive real estate business just sending cards. This is why he's not about send out cards, is because literally he spends 1 hour a day sending cards and gifts to all different people, just acknowledging them, saying, hey, thank you. Sending them to like the company that we buy our insurance through, or to mortgage people. Like if you acknowledge people, if you spend an hour a day just sending little gifts to people, what does that invoke? It invokes the power of reciprocity. Because now people are like, oh my God, I just got a box of brownies from Jay. What can I do to reciprocate? And what they can do is they all know that if I know somebody who's looking to buy or sell a home, I have to make sure it gets to Jay. Meaningful and unexpected gifts are most powerful. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, Theodore Roosevelt. And reciprocation is a cultural, universal, taught in all societies. So it is in every culture. You're going to find people that want to reciprocate. Let's talk about another way that we can get people to reciprocate. People like, so if we want to influence somebody to do what we want them to do, people are more likely to do what you want them to do if you are like them. So we like people who are most like us. If you want people to like you, buy or sell with you, you need to figure out what your similarities are. So when you're on a listing appointment, to build that rapport so that they are more likely to be influenced, to build the rapport, you have to spend a portion of your listing appointment or your buyer presentation like getting to know them personally and pointing out the area where you guys are the same. So the way you find those commonalities is by asking them questions, looking for clues on social media, looking for clues around their home, like trying to figure out like what you guys have in common. So the way I do that, like when I'm on a recruiting appointment, I will, if I find out like they went to Bentley, I almost never talk about the fact that I went to Bentley unless I have somebody who's sitting in front of me that went to Bentley. If I find out they went to Bentley, I make sure I bring it up, because now I know that I'm more likely to be able to influence that person because we have something in common. If you have kids that are around the same age, or you have kids that went to the same college, or you grew up in the same town, a portion of your listing and buyer presentation has to be about like figuring out what makes us alike, because the more alike we are, then the more likely we are to be able to influence that person. We like people who like us. So the reason why compliments work is we have to make sure that the other person knows that we like them, because they will only work with people who they believe like them. There was a study about hair salons, and at hair salons where the salon tells the people that any hairstyle would look good on them, their tips were 37% higher than all the other salons, because that's why compliments work. Like, we want to work with people who like us. Number 3, when it comes to influence, if you want to influence somebody, social proof matters. So this is why testimonials are so big in our business. The Zillow reviews. If you get a Zillow review, stick it on social media. People work with, or people like to work with people who everybody else is working with. So People think it's appropriate for them to believe, feel, or do something to the extent that others, especially comparable others, are believing, feeling, or doing it. So restaurants use social proof by listing customer favorites on a menu. So when a restaurant puts customer favorites on their menu, the orders for those items are 13 to 20% higher than all the other items on the list. So think about that on your listing and buyer presentations. How could you use that? Like here, this is what most of my customers do. So if you have like a product offering of 3 different things and you say this is what most customers do, then most anybody else that you're trying to influence is going to do the same thing. We know Amazon does it. Amazon, when you're buying a book, will say, oh, what other people like you bought was all these other books too. They're using the idea of social influence. Of course, Zillow reviews, your listing presentations, buyer presentations, Facebook page, postcards. These are not complete unless they include client testimonials. It's a simple way to persuade people to work with you. People want to do what the crowd is doing. So anytime you're presenting, you want to be talking about what the crowd is doing. What are your other customers doing? Number 4, authority. When a legitimate expert on a topic speaks, people are usually persuaded. Sometimes information becomes persuasive only because an authority is its source. So what does this mean for you? If you want to be awesome at influencing people to do what you want them to do, host a show, write a book, write a blog, be like the blogger, the writer, contribute to articles, help a reporter organization, Haro. Sign up for Haro, because Haro is a place that all day, every day, they'll email you and say like all these Realtor.com, Zillow, Trulia, all these places are looking for realtors to comment or be quoted in articles. And when you are an authority figure, then people assume that you know what you're talking about. So become the authority. There's a picture here of Steve Verdelli and I. Steve Verdelli's in our Wellesley office. He has a cable TV show. Go down to your local cable access channel and ask if they'll let you do a real estate show. So Steve has a show in Wellesley called Another Home Sold. He is an authority on real estate. The 7 Secrets to Hiring a Lion book. Like, anytime you can write a book, and by the way, we live in a society where anybody can write a book. We live in a society where anybody in 5 minutes, you can create your own blog and be the authority on real estate in your marketplace. Every spare moment you have should be used to create some content, because when you create content, you become an authority, and when you are an authority, you can influence people. Number 5, scarcity. If you want to influence people, then what you need to know is that people want more of what they can't have. So when Apple releases their newest product, do they put out enough for everybody to have one? No, they make it scarce. Why? Because they want to have these ridiculous lines for a mile outside their stores while people are waiting. And Apple knows people want what there is not enough of. So think about how you could use that in your business. One of my friends, Michael Carucci, $150 million power agent in Boston. I've had the distinct pleasure of attending listing presentations with him to see how he operates. And one of the things that makes Michael very unique and different, now his average price is somewhere around $5 million. He typically does not work with anybody under $2 million. And when he goes on a listing presentation, the way that he talks to the client is like, hey, I haven't decided if I want your listing yet. He says, first of all, one of the things he does in the initial appointment is he says, you know what, I'm not sure that this will fit the portfolio of properties that I sell, so I have to decide if I even want this listing. Now think about the dynamic of that, because most of us go on listing presentations and we're like, what can I do to get the listing? What can I do to get the listing? What can I do to make the seller like me? Michael shows up with confidence, and within 15 minutes, it's clear to the seller he hasn't decided if he's taking the listing. So he's changed the power dynamic of the listing presentation, because what happens when somebody shows up to your house and says, you know what, I don't know if this is going to work for me. I haven't decided I want your listing. Well, now the person wants them even more. The scarcity of an item does more than raise the possibility of loss. It also raises the judged value of that item. Any constraint on access increases the worth of what is being offered. So don't be all things to everybody, because you devalue yourself. And last, consistency. Normally we want to be seen as consistent with our existing commitments, such as the previous statements we made, stands we've taken, and actions we have performed. When it comes to influencing people, the best way to influence is to be consistent in what we say that we're going to do. One thing that I also want to quickly address before we get to wrapping up today is buyer agency contracts. So with this idea of consistency in mind, many buyer agents don't have a buyer agency contract signed. So they work with buyers. What I always say is that if you have a buyer agency contract signed, that's as good, in my opinion, as a listing contract. So if you have 10 listing contracts signed right now, many of you understand that's like money in the bank. Those deals are going to close. But what happens if you have 10 buyers that you're working with? Doesn't really mean much unless you have a buyer agent contract signed with the people that they're definitely going to work with you. But people are consistent. So if you want to influence people, then one of the ways to do that is to, if they say something, then people are more likely to follow up and be consistent in what they say they are. So I'm going to try to articulate a couple of examples of what I mean by this. If I go out onto social media every day and I talk about being healthy and eating healthy and going to the gym and walking, I am less likely to be seen at one of the offices eating a candy bar, because I'm all over social media touting the benefits of healthy living. I am less likely to now be seen out in public eating candy, because I have to be consistent with who I am saying I am on the outside world. The reason why buyer contracts work is because if somebody signs something saying that they're going to be working with you, they now want to be consistent with working with you. Another way that we could put this is, let's say that through your buyer interview or your buyer process, when you first meet with a buyer, if you were to get the consumer to agree that your time is best spent only working with people who have committed with you. So would you agree, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, that I don't have the time to work with every buyer in this market, that I really need to work with the ones that are absolutely 100% committed to me? If they say yes to that, you are 100 times more likely to get them to sign a buyer contract, because they've already agreed with the original statement. So try to find opportunities to get people to be consistent, so that once they say something to the outside world, they are more likely to be consistent now in their actions. So through your presentations, get people to say what you want them to say, and then they're more likely to follow up in an action that matches that. So all of these principles are from the book, The Psychology of Persuasion. It's called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. Next week, I know I've run over on my time today. Next week, we're going to talk about Persuasion, which is his follow-up book by Robert Cialdini on how to get people to do what you want them to do. So with that, I hope to see many of you at tonight's Roar Award. Now that I'm on the road to recovery from last week, I'll make sure to reach out to anybody that we had coaching sessions that I need to follow up with. I want to thank you for joining me for our Fridays at 9. Thanks, everybody.